Lecture 9: Magical Thinking and Exploratory Behavior. In this lecture, I will present experiments which showed that both children and adults are significantly more interested in exploring magical events than exploring novel and interesting physical events. The effect that I call the impossible over the possible effect, or the IP effect for short. I will then discuss possible causes of the IP effect and suggest what practical implications this effect implies. This is the main publication for this lecture. The aim of the experiment was to test the assumption that one particular feature that makes a stimulus intrinsically interesting for humans is the stimulus's capacity to violate fundamental physical laws. The rationale for this assumption was that, apart from being novel, this stimulus is also impossible. That is, it involves an element of the supernatural and cannot be explained in terms of modern science. To examine this, it is necessary to provide a participant with a novel stimulus which is framed either in the context of scientific views, a counterintuitive physical event, or in the context that involves an element of the supernatural, a magical event. If the stimulus's impossibility is an additional factor that contributes toward eliciting curiosity and exploration, then participants' tendency to engage in exploratory behavior towards the magical, impossible event should be stronger than towards the same but possible event. Let this be named the impossible over possible effect, or the IP effect. Accordingly, the aim of experiment 1 was to examine if the IP effect can be observed in children of 4, 6, and 9 years old. In the pretest interviews, children were tested if they can understand the difference between ordinary events that were only accompanied by a magic gesture. For instance, when banning the postage stamp is simply accompanied by waving a magic wand at the same time, and genuine magical events. For instance, when waving the magic wand makes the postage stamp disappear from this world. The children were then individually tested in 2 conditions in which they were given a choice about whether or not to place their valuable objects, postage stamps that they had received as a reward, at risk in order to see an unusual phenomenon. In the magical condition, a postage stamp disappeared in an empty box after the experimenter put a magic spell on the box. In the counterintuitive physical condition, the same effect was explained as a result of some trick, which happens when the box's lid is shut. The children were then asked to put a nice postage stamp they had received as a prize for participation inside the box and offer the choice to allow or not the experimenter to put his spell on the box in the magical condition, or shut the lid in the counterintuitive physical condition. The number of children who allowed the experimenter to proceed with the manipulation was taken as a measure of children's curiosity to explore the effect, magic or trick. On this graph, we can see that in all age groups, a significantly larger number of children wanted to put their prized objects at risk in order to see a magical event, blue bars, than in order to see an unusual physical effect, red bars. These results support the hypothesis that children show a significantly stronger tendency to experiment with the magic wand than with the trick box, thus revealing the IP effect. But perhaps children were more willing to experiment with the magic wand than with the trick box on a tacit assumption that they would be able to subsequently recover the stamp with the same magic wand, a possibility that would seem much less likely if the box is presented as a sophisticated physical device that annihilates objects placed into it. To answer this question, adult participants, university graduates and undergraduates, were tested in the same two conditions: magical condition and counterintuitive physical condition. It was easy to make clear to them that if they lose the valuable objects in any of the above conditions, then this loss would be irreversible. The procedure of this experiment was the same as in experiment 1, save that in the counterintuitive physical condition, after a participant put the stamp in the box and closed the lid, the experimenter switched an unknown physical device on for a few seconds and then off again. This was done to acquaint the causality vector factor in both conditions, by making the causes of the object's destruction look like external events, either the magic spell or the physical device. In addition, in the end of the experiment, the third, imaginative trial was introduced. In this trial, participants were asked if they would be prepared to proceed with the testing if they had to put at risk not their driver's licenses, but much more valuable documents, passports. The purpose of this trial was to examine if the IP effect would remain when the cost of exploratory behavior was further increased. Like in experiment 1, in this experiment, a significantly larger number of participants were willing to put their driving licenses or passports at risk in order to see a magical event, blue bars, than in order to see a novel physical event, red bars. Yet, as we could see from this graph, increasing the cost of exploratory behavior decreased participants' tendency to explore the effect in both magical and counterintuitive physical effect conditions. We can therefore conclude as follows. The results of these experiments suggest that motivation which powered exploratory behavior towards the magical event was significantly stronger than motivation which powered exploratory behavior towards the counterintuitive physical event. This happened because motivation behind exploring the effect of physical device could only be fueled by participants' conscious knowledge that such effects contradict physical causality. In contrast, motivation behind exploring the effect of the magic spell could also get additional energy from the participants' subconscious and suppressed belief in mind over matter magic. The impossible over possible effect can explain the success that fantastic characters with magical powers enjoy in the domains of fiction, entertainment, and commercial advertising. If you were to choose between going to see a new sequel of the Lord of the Rings series or to see the BBC movie about the Big Bang, what would you choose?